Hey everyone, and welcome back to Concentration Check. This is PriorPlays weekly podcast. I'm Wyatt,
And I'm Tony.
and we're back again to go into the ins and outs of Homebrew. Now, for some of you who don't know what that is, Homebrew is when anyone from a individual in your party to the party itself to, at the greatest extent, the community as a whole comes together and creates something that was not before in the game, or even they bring something from an earlier edition back. This can be anything from a new mechanic, a race, a class, gameplay style. I, for one, am a big acceptor of homebrew. I use homebrew in my games. I love using homebrew for my characters, whether that's me including an entirely revamped poison dictionary encyclopedia for a specific character I want to do, or even using a new race to play a mouse folk alchemist that just blows things up as only 2 feet tall. Tony, how do you view about it?
I'm a big advocate for homebrew. Obviously, make sure the DM knows, make sure everyone's comfortable with having a homebrew campaign, which everyone should be, unless you're like going to play like some module or Adventures League type thing, and then obviously it's probably not going to be a homebrew thing. But I, for one, like homebrew. It's makes the game interesting instead of just having that cookie cutter mold that you follow. You play a barbarian, you have a wizard, and you have your cleric, and they just do the same thing every single game, and they say no variant. They're just gonna run the same person over and over again, and that's it.
I think as well that people remember homebrew more than they remember a module. I have friends that I talk to and text, and I'll tell them kind of our little adventures in our little homebrew world, because for the most part I will strictly run homebrew. I don't run modules or anything else like that. But when I tell them about the games we have versus their DM, who only wants to run modules, doesn't allow homebrew, very rules lawyery, they always say, they always sound jealous. They're like, oh, I wish I could be in that game, or I wish I could do this, I wish I could do that. I mean, you just have to find the DM that'll work with you. And the big, I guess, hurdle you have to get over is finding that DM that says, yeah, sure, we can add this in, we can do this, we can do that. And it can also just be little minor changes too. Like, I, for one, I don't make my characters roll for health. I don't. It's just a flat healing potion. I know my friend Shay, who was on a couple of our casts previously, he is a big proponent for you get max health all the way up through level 5, or whatever level the DM sets. You get max health and you start rolling for your health. And it's just little changes like that gives like a new quality of life to it. It breathes some fresh air into it. Kind of just, it makes everything so much more smoother and a lot more seamless.
Yeah, and I completely agree with you on that. There are a lot of things that I really like about homebrew, and one specific aspect of it is spells. I feel that it's nice to have all the spells that the player's handbook has and the other extended books that come after it, but it's very fun to introduce some new type of magic or something that's not covered, because it's almost as if you're unearthing your own magic.
You're unearthing your own arcana.
Yeah.
Yes. As it was, yeah. Huh. Yeah, I could see that, and I always love to see, especially on Reddit, the D&D community, when they'll come together and you have this person that spent years crafting this big thing and it's translated over. There's usually, if someone spends years on something, that they're putting in enough effort to make sure, one, it's not broken, and two, it's lore friendly. Who am I to say no, I'm not going to allow that in? But there's also, if you are going to allow homebrew, you need to realize that sometimes people just make things that they think are cool, and yeah, they, with all intents and purposes, they probably are cool, but they are significantly overpowered and game breaking. And I'm in the market to augment my game, not break it.
Yeah, there are some game breaking things about homebrew. I feel like everyone, when they're starting off getting homebrew, they're like, "Oh, this sounds like a great idea. That sounds like a great idea," and they end up creating this monster that can do anything and everything and just one shots every single opponent. And then you just have to take like a little step back, kind of pump your brakes, and look at it from a kind of building standpoint to eventually get your character. As a DM, I would like to, whenever I introduce homebrew, I like to start them off small and then gradually build their power up as it goes. What about you?
When I ever start with homebrew, I like to kind of focus into one aspect. So if I'm going to introduce homebrew in, especially to new players, I'm only going to start with little gameplay tweaks. So like the potion thing or the max HP, something that I can kind of come up with that, like I said, makes it easier, but they're still grasping the main focus of the game. And it kind of expands their worldview a bit, but it's still within the realms that Wizards have put out for us. Once you get around to some of the more experienced groups and, they kind of done everything, they're kind of bored, that's when you can start implementing things like, Pathfinder classes or Matthew Mercer's Gunslinger, those little things here and there to kind of bump something and reinstill creativity into them as they craft their characters and go about this campaign.
Yeah. So let's kind of get into some spells that you might homebrew.
I definitely think that I would homebrew something like an augment system, not necessarily spell itself, but like a callus or an augment system where you're not having to expand another spell slot. But in our campaign, I've introduced blood magic, and I think that was really cool. And the fact that yes, they were powerful, but they weren't overpowered because of the cost. And for those of you at home, with my blood magic, it's essentially the amount of damage you do and the amount of damage you take can be equal.
And for me, when I would create something, I love making a cost for everything that you do. So if something's giving you a power, there's always going to be some sort of consequence, especially if it's, say, an evil entity.
Right.
There's always a price for power.
Now, I do know one thing that I was taught to me in pretty much the first homebrew thing that was ever given to me, and that I continue my campaign today. And every spell except for rituals don't require components, and I think that's really cool because it's faster. It allows wizards to kind of use their stuff without worrying about, oh, do I have components for this? Do I have components for that? Of course, when you get with rituals and you're trying to resurrect somebody or, open a planar gate, of course you're gonna run into some components here and there because those are really, earth-shattering, world-bending spells. But I'm not going to require someone to pay money to cast Magic Missile.
How I've done that in the past is we usually just took a gold monetary system for the spells and just kind of said, well, take this much amount out of your gold or silver, whatever it is, of how much it costs, and from there you're able to cast a spell. So every time you cast that one spell, you're losing out on gold. You may not necessarily be buying every single object, but it's like a stand-in for the gold, for the items.
Now, what do you think are the dangers of homebrew other than people just making themselves overpowered?
it can sort of distract from people who want to just play standard campaign. So say they want to play just a standard life cleric, and someone else comes in and they're playing some kind of blood warlord. It kind of might distract a little bit from what they're used to.
Right. I think it also could be that people are getting so caught up in trying to make their character that they don't really give a damn about playing anymore. It's just, let me make the coolest character I can. And I mean, I love making characters. Making characters is the best part about D&D for me. But if that's your sole aspect, and you're going to take all this time to create this character, but you also want to make sure that they stay alive, and no, I don't want them to get hurt, I don't want them to get this, and they start playing really safe, then that just kind of throws the entire party out of whack. It slows down the game. It makes my job as a DM harder, because now I have to dumb down my encounter system in order to make sure that you, who have scoured Reddit or scoured everything else to find the coolest, most animeist swordsman you could find, doesn't get a paper cut.
Yeah, and also I think it could also cause imbalance in the party. Say you have this super powerful player, and everyone else is playing a standard character. You can't get hit by anything, but everyone else can. So now your DM's setting, CR20 encounters for you when everyone's level 1, but you just so happen to be a level 1 that can actually stand toe to toe with this CR20 encounter.
Do you have any rules for any DMs out there that want to start incorporating homebrew, or any personal rules? I'll give mine. My whole thing is allow usually 3 homebrews per character, so that it can either be a race, a class, or pretty much just a add-on or an extra for them. So it allows them to choose a race if they don't like any of the races in the player's handbook, a class for the same reason, make sure you read it thoroughly, and just a little add-on that kind of adds quality of life, like I said earlier, the kind of poison compendium, or just so on and so forth. But pretty much don't let them get more than 3, just let them have that. Read them thoroughly, step 2, and then step 3, ask yourself if this is going to fit in well with your world.
I completely agree with all those statements. I would just like to add and to emphasize, review it. There's nothing worse than you just glancing over it and the player just snuck something in under your nose as game breaking. And number 2, maybe just take what they've created, just have a copy of it off on the side and run through a kind of solo campaign with yourself, or hell, just take this person on a solo campaign, and essentially you can knock out their background story with this solo campaign.
Right. Well, I think that'll pretty much finish up this cast today. I apologize for the kind of short episode length, but just don't fret, because currently myself and Tony, we have another type of video in the mix. We're calling it PriorPlays Spellbook, where we will take a look at all the schools of magic, the different spell types and spell effects, and help you not to be so wary of playing a wizard for your next campaign. Please don't forget to follow us on all of our social media. That's Twitter, Reddit, Amino, and Instagram. I'm Wyatt.
And I'm Tony.
And you've been listening to Prior Play. Keep those dice rolls high, folks, and have a good day.